A ballroom filled with wealth, power, and polished arrogance. Gold lights reflecting off crystal glasses. Executives laughing in tight circles. And at the center of it all, a black woman standing completely alone. She hasn't said a word yet, but the room has already judged her. They think she's staff. They think she doesn't belong. They think they know her place. What they don't know is that she walked into this gathering with enough power to rewrite every name on the guest list, including the CEO who tries to embarrass her in front of everyone. Tonight, he's about to discover the truth. The woman he tried to intimidate is the billionaire investor who now owns his entire company. This is a story of how prejudice exposes itself, how arrogance collapses under truth, and how one woman walked into a room built to exclude her and changed everything. Before we continue with the story, let's know where you're watching from in the comment section, and please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to see more of our videos. Let's get back to the story. The chandeliers glowed like molten gold, spilling warm light across the grand ballroom. Laughter from polished executives drifted beneath the soft jazz, mixing with the clink of crystal glasses and the quiet hum of money moving without ever being seen. It was the annual VectorTech Investor Gala, the kind of event where power wasn't spoken, only implied, where the wealthy floated and the rest tried not to be noticed. But everything paused, every whisper, every sideways glance, when she stepped inside. Morgan Lee, black, graceful, alone. Her navy dress glimmered against the deep mahogany floors as she walked, drawing eyes the way a rising moon draws the tides. But the looks weren't admiration. They were confusion, annoyance, silent judgment cloaked in designer suits. She offered a polite smile, but the smiles she received back were tight, brittle things, like people trying to be polite while wondering who let her in. Near the center of the room, a tall man in a white tailored tuxedo lifted his flute of champagne with a lazy smirk. Vincent Hale, the CEO of VectorTech. Sharp jaw, sharper ego. The type of man who believed every room bent around him. He leaned toward the cluster of executives around him. "Looks like catering's getting bold," he said under his breath, "but not low enough." Several chuckled. One woman covered her mouth, as if embarrassment were contagious. Morgan kept walking, unbothered. She knew this dance, had lived it in boardrooms, lobbies, airports, elevators. Assumptions that shadowed her like a second skin. But she was here for a reason. As she passed one of the high-top tables, a man in a navy suit waved his empty glass at her. "Miss, could you get me another one? Something with more bite." Morgan blinked. "Excuse me?" "Come on," he said, already turning away. "Service staff shouldn't linger. Move along." She didn't respond. Another couple approached, their tone syrup-sweet but condescending. "Oh, dear, you're standing in the VIP section," the woman said. "The general attendees are on the other side of the ballroom." Morgan stared at her. "I'm exactly where I need to be." The woman tilted her head, pity dripping from her smile. "Of course you think that." Morgan inhaled deeply. Slow, patient, she continued toward the center of the room, toward the glowing crystal display where VectorTech's newest product prototype sat under a spotlight. That's when Vincent stepped directly into her path. "Miss," he said, voice dripping with polite arrogance, "this area is restricted to investors and key partners. If you need assistance, I can have security guide you to the guest lounge." "Security?" she repeated softly. "Yes. And don't worry, we're very diversity-friendly here." He flashed a rehearsed corporate grin. "We welcome everyone, just in the right spaces." Behind him, cameras clicked. People watched the confrontation with thin curiosity, like spectators waiting for a performer to be ushered off stage. Morgan's eyes didn't waver. Not once. "Mr. Hale," she said, "why do you assume I'm not an investor?" Vincent laughed, loudly, ostentatiously. "Because I know every investor in this room. Believe me, if you were one of them, I'd already know your name." The executives laughed with him, a ripple of validation. Morgan's voice remained calm. "Interesting." She reached into her small clutch, pulled out a slim black envelope, and held it out. Vincent didn't take it. "I'm not signing autographs tonight. "It's not for you to sign," she said. "It's for you to understand." Something in her tone made him snatch it with a scoff. He opened it. Read the first line. His smile cracked. A fissure. Then the whole expression collapsed. Because the document clearly stated, transfer of majority ownership, approved by the board, effective immediately. And beneath it, Morgan E. Lee, principal investor. Vincent's breath hitched. Someone nearby whispered, "No, that can't be right." Morgan stepped closer, voice soft, but every word landed with weight. "I didn't come here for your approval, Mr. Hale," she said. "I came here to observe how leadership treats people they think have nothing to offer." The ballroom fell still, utterly still. She glanced around at every face that laughed, dismissed, minimized. "And now," she said, "I have my answer." Vincent tried to recover. Why wasn't I informed? Who approved this? Who allowed? But he didn't get to finish, because behind Morgan, standing at the entrance to the gala, was another figure, someone who had just arrived, someone whose presence sent an instant wave of panic through the executives. A powerful name, a feared one, a person whose involvement would make everything even worse for the CEO. Morgan turned slightly. Her eyes narrowed, and the room held its breath as the figure stepped forward. The doors of the ballroom closed with a soft, almost ceremonial thud. Heads snapped toward the entrance. The figure stepping inside didn't rush, didn't posture, didn't need to. Elias Ward, the billionaire angel investor whose name alone could shake the stock market, walked the crowd with the casual confidence a man accustomed to power bowing at his feet. Salt and pepper hair, midnight black suit, a presence that made even the chandelier's glow seem dimmer. People parted instinctively. Elias wasn't just wealthy. He was influential, a kingmaker in the tech world, a man CEOs wrote speeches for in hopes of being noticed. And he walked straight toward Morgan. Not Vincent, not the board. Morgan. A hush fell so thick you could hear the soft tap of Morgan's heels as she turned to greet him. Elias nodded respectfully. "I came as soon as I saw the update file." "Congratulations, Morgan. The acquisition went through beautifully." Gasps around the room. A drink slipped from someone's hand and shattered against the floor. Morgan smiled, warm, genuine. "Thank you. I want to see the company's culture firsthand before the restructuring begins." Elias chuckled. "Well, from what I've observed so far," his eyes drifted to Vincent, "there's plenty to restructure." Vincent's throat bobbed. "And Mr. Ward, I had no idea you were visiting tonight." Elias finished. "Yes, I'm sure you didn't." He stepped closer to the CEO, lowering his voice just enough to be heard by everyone. "You know, Vincent, Morgan isn't just a majority investor. She's one of the smartest financial strategists I've ever worked with. She built her empire from the ground up, earned every inch of her success." Elias turned to Morgan again, his respect unmistakable. "And she's someone I trust more than most men in this room." Every diversity hire comment, every dismissive laugh, every assumption exposed under a spotlight brighter than the one shining on VectorTech's prototype. Vincent exhaled shakily. "Morgan, Ms. Lee, I apologize for my earlier comments." Morgan lifted a hand, stopping him cold. "I'm not interested in apologies that only appear when power shifts," she said. "I'm interested in accountability." Elias folded his arms. "Morgan now has controlling interest. She'll determine the next steps." Eyes widened across the gala. Executives stiffened. Board members exchanged panicked glances. Morgan stepped forward, voice steady, measured, but carrying the force of everything she'd endured silently until now. "When I entered this room tonight, I was mistaken for staff, restricted, dismissed, laughed at, not because of my resume, not because of my qualifications, but because of my skin." Her gaze swept the ballroom, capturing every guilty stare. "And you revealed exactly what kind of leadership this company has tolerated." She turned back to Vincent, calm but unwavering. "Tomorrow morning, I'll be naming an interim CEO while we conduct an internal audit of VectorTech's culture, leadership practices, and discrimination patterns." Gasps erupted again. Someone choked on champagne. Vincent's shoulders sagged, shock, then fear washing through him like cold water. You're replacing me? He whispered. No, Morgan said softly. I'm holding you accountable. Whether that leads to replacement depends on what the audit reveals. Elias nodded in approval. Several employees in the back exchanged hopeful glances, like people finally seeing sunlight through a crack in the ceiling. Morgan turned toward the rest of the room. For years, you built an empire on innovation, she said. But a company cannot innovate when its leadership is stuck in prejudice. Today, that changes. Her words rippled across the silence, firm and resonant. The ballroom no longer felt like a place of exclusion. It felt like a place on the verge of transformation. Then Morgan lifted her chin, eyes locking directly on the group of execs who mocked her earlier. And as for those of you who laughed when you thought I didn't belong here, I want you to remember tonight. Remember how quickly the story changes when the truth steps into the room. Their faces drained of color. Morgan turned back to Elias, her voice softening just slightly. Shall we continue with the announcement? Elias smiled. Lead the way. And together, they walked deeper into ballroom, past stunned executives, trembling leadership, and a CEO whose world had just collapsed around him. The music had gone quiet. The murmurs had dissolved. The golden glow of the ballroom suddenly felt colder, sharper, like the entire place was waiting to exhale. Vincent Hale stood frozen, the full truth sinking into him with the weight of a collapsing building. Moments ago, he'd strutted through the gala like a king. Now he stood exposed, face pale, hands trembling slightly, while the woman he had dismissed, belittled, and mocked now carried the future of his entire company in her hands. But something unexpected happened. The arrogance drained from Vincent's expression, replaced by something raw, genuine, human, regret. Morgan, he said quietly, his voice breaking in a way no one had ever heard from him. I've run this company for 12 years. I thought I understood people. I thought I understood leadership. He swallowed hard. Tonight, I saw exactly how blind I've been. The executives shifted awkwardly. Some looked down. Others looked at Morgan, waiting to see how she would respond. Vincent wasn't finished. I don't have an excuse. His eyes glistened, not dramatically, but in a humbled, honest way. What I said to you earlier wasn't just unprofessional. It was ugly. It came from a place I never acknowledged in myself. Bias, arrogance, entitlement, and I am sorry. The room held its breath. This time, he wasn't apologizing because she was powerful. He was apologizing because he finally saw the truth. He looked around at his board members, his executives, then back at Morgan. But whether I apologize or not, the damage is done. Morgan studied him. This was no performance. He was a man seeing the broken parts of himself in real time. I can do better, he said softly. I want to do better. Even if I no longer lead Vector Tech. There was the acceptance, the consequence he knew he deserved. For the first time all night, Morgan's expression softened, not with pity, but with clarity. Accountability isn't meant to destroy you, she said. It's meant to teach you. And you're right. Leadership requires self-awareness, humility, fairness. Vincent nodded, shoulders heavy. And because of that, Morgan continued, you will step down as CEO effective immediately. The whisper that rolled through the ballroom felt like a releasing breath. Vincent closed his eyes briefly, not resisting, not arguing. Who will replace me? He asked. Morgan turned to Elias, who smiled in reassurance, then looked back at the room. Someone who understands leadership is service, she said. Someone who has seen the best and worst of this company and still believes it can change. Gasps, brows raised. Vincent blinked. You mean someone internal? Morgan nodded. And someone who will ensure what happened tonight never happens again. Several employees exchanged hopeful glances. Company veterans straightened up. This felt like a rebirth, not of the company, but of its values. Vincent stepped forward, voice low. Whoever it is, I hope they do what I failed to do. Morgan met his gaze with quiet strength. They will. A long silence stretched between them, not tense, but meaningful. Not angry, but reflective. Vindication wasn't the goal. Transformation was. And Vincent had finally taken the first step toward it, even though his leadership ended tonight. Elias placed a hand gently on Morgan's shoulder. Everything changes from here. Yes, Morgan said, turning back to the room filled with stunned executives and silent witnesses. It does. For all of us. And with that, the gala lights seemed to brighten, like the first flicker of dawn after a long, shadowed night. The ballroom slowly rediscovered its breath. The soft jazz returned. But the energy had changed. Less glitter, less ego, more gravity. People weren't looking at Vincent anymore. They were looking at Morgan, a woman who walked into a room full of doubt and left carrying its future. Morgan stepped toward the small platform near the prototype display. Elias followed but stayed behind her, letting her lead. When she reached the microphone, the room fell into complete silence. Her voice was calm, sure, and deeply human. Tonight showed us something important, Morgan began. Not just about vector tech, but about how power can make some people forget compassion, fairness, and basic respect. Eyes lowered, hands folded. Truth has a way of settling into people, whether they're ready or not. But it also showed, she continued, that people can change when they confront who they really are. Vincent stood near the back, listening with the weight of humility. His downfall had not made him small. It had made him human. And Morgan understood that everyone in the room needed to see that accountability wasn't cruelty. It was clarity. Effective immediately, Morgan announced. Elena Brooks will serve as interim CEO. Shock rippled through the room, but this time a hopeful kind. Elena, quiet, sharp-minded, a black woman who had worked twice as hard for half the recognition, covered her mouth in disbelief. She'd been in the company for 9 years, rising from a junior analyst to senior strategy manager through pure grit, intelligence, and grace. She had been ignored by the same executives who mocked Morgan earlier. Morgan gestured toward her, someone who has always led with integrity, intelligence, and humility, whether or not anyone acknowledged her. Someone who knows what this company could be, not just what it has been. Applause broke out. Not the stiff, polite kind, but genuine appreciation. A few people even stood. Elena wiped a tear, then stepped forward, embracing Morgan briefly before turning to the crowd with steady breath. I promise you, she said, we are building a future where every voice matters, and no one is reduced because of their skin, their gender, or their background. Elias nodded approvingly. Morgan's eyes shone with quiet pride. Then Morgan addressed the room one final time. We all make assumptions, she said. We all hold biases. The test of character isn't whether those flaws exist. It's what we choose to do when they're revealed. Her gaze swept across every face. Those who mocked her, those who watched silently, and those who silently wish for change. That is why accountability matters. It restores balance. It reminds us that respect must never be selective, and it demands that we build systems where dignity isn't optional. It's required. Vincent bowed his head, accepting not just his removal, but the lesson etched into it. Morgan stepped back from the microphone, letting the truth settle into the gold-lit air. And in that moment, it wasn't just Vector Tech's culture that shifted. It was something larger, something personal for every person in the room. A reminder that justice often starts in quiet moments of awakening, and that resilience, dignity, and truth will always outlast arrogance. Before leaving, Morgan offered a final message, one not only for the ballroom, but for every listener beyond it. Treat every human right, either black or white, and don't look down on anyone. Then she walked away, shoulders steady, head high, leaving behind a company reborn, a humble man learning to rebuild, and a room full of people who would never again forget that power has no color, but integrity always shines. If this story resonates, share it. Comment your thoughts. And subscribe so these voices are never silenced.